What if I told you a country willingly mortgaged its future not to foreign invaders, not in a war, but through a series of financial deals, accounting tricks, and political bargains? That the very instrument meant to lift its citizens' debt was used to slowly erode their prosperity and sovereignty? Greece is the first modern example in Europe where a developed economy was brought to its knees not by bombs, but by numbers and the choices behind them. In this video, we'll unveil how a nation sold its future, step by step, the hidden surprises no one expected, and what lessons the world ignored until it was too late. In 2009, the newly elected government revealed a deficit more than twice previous estimates. That revelation triggered a chain reaction that would reshape European politics and drag millions of Greeks into hardship. But behind the headlines lay a decades-long unraveling. Today, we'll trace the full arc: origins, breakdown, attempts at rescue, modern echoes, and what this story warns us about the debt traps waiting for other nations. Stay with me, because the real shock isn't the crisis itself. It's what it reveals about power, trust, and the rules of money. We begin not in 2009, but in the 1980 seconds and 1990 seconds, when the structural foundations of the crisis were quietly laid. Greece in the post-junta era. After the fall of the military junta in 1974, Greece returned to democratic rule. The new governments faced a legacy of underdevelopment, weak institutions, and social expectations of catch-up with Western Europe. Public spending rose fast. Public sector wages and pensions expanded, and populist politics, especially under PASOK, Pan-Hellenic Socialist Movement, founded by Andreas Papandreou, promised prosperity. Yet beneath the enthusiasm, cracks emerged. Persistent budget deficits, growing public debt, weak tax collection, and a tradition of creative accounting. Over time, debt piled up. Scholars later showed that Greece's debt divided by GNI ratio in 1981 was about 25%, but by the early 1990 seconds, it had ballooned toward 100%. Meanwhile, Europe was building a giant new experiment, a common currency, the euro. To join, countries had to meet strict criteria: deficits under 3% of GDP, debt under 60%, inflation within bounds. Greece, eager to be part of Europe's core, pushed hard to meet the thresholds, sometimes by fudging numbers or using off-balance mechanisms engineered with banks like Goldman Sachs. So when I say Greece sold its future, I mean it in two senses. First, it committed future public revenues to debt servicing. Second, it locked itself into a system, the number U, with no escape hatch. But this story is not linear or simple. Later, you'll see a twist. The same institutions that acted as saviors also constrained Greece's options and often demanded more pain than relief. Origins: debt, accounting, and the Euro Mirage. From the 1980 seconds through the 1990 seconds, successive Greek governments ran persistent deficits. One reason was generous welfare policies, the expansion of the public sector, and frequent tax cuts or exemptions targeted at vote blocks. Greece's ability to raise taxes was limited by weak enforcement and rampant evasion. Another trick: Greece began including loan proceeds as part of revenue in budget tables, which understated the real deficit, essentially treating debt as income. Later analysis would show that excluding these deficits were much deeper. When the European Union created the euro, Greece was under pressure to make its public finances look more respectable. But Greece's actual deficit and debt were far higher than officially reported. The country enlisted financial engineering with banks such as Goldman Sachs to structure currency swaps that temporarily masked liabilities. These deals would later draw scrutiny. Greece officially entered the euro in 2001. On paper, it seemed to graduate into core Europe. In reality, it entered with hidden liabilities and structural vulnerabilities. The euro scheme itself removed the option of currency devaluation, a powerful tool countries often use to correct imbalances. Once in the euro, Greece could no longer print its way out or devalue to regain competitiveness. From that moment on, it would have to live or die by reforms, fiscal discipline, or external aid. Between 2001 and 2007, global capital was flowing. Greece borrowed cheaply. Consumption and real estate boomed. Public and private sectors both leveraged up. For a while, the illusion held. Growth rates were respectable. Debt servicing seemed manageable, and markets remained confident. Rise, complacency, overborrowing, and hidden risk. By the mid-2000s, the Greek economy's growth was increasingly driven by public spending rather than robust exports or productivity gains. The state took on mega projects, for instance, the 2004 Olympics, with gigantic cost overruns. This imposed further fiscal burden. In 2004, Greece hosted the Olympics, with costs in the excess of €9 billion. That expenditure pushed the 2004 deficit to over 6% and debt rising accordingly. Even before the global crisis, cracks were visible. Greece routinely violated the Maastricht limits. Its debt-to-GDP ratio was already above 100%, and deficits were unsustainably large. But markets tolerated it. Then came 2007-08. The global financial crisis froze capital markets. Sovereign borrowing became more expensive for peripheral countries. Suddenly, Greece's ability to refinance its debts came under stress. The sudden stop in capital inflows revealed that the foundations were weak. Greece lost access to cheap credit. Interest rates on Greek bonds soared relative to German bunds. The yield spread became a red warning sign. But the final trigger was political. In October 2009, the newly elected Prime Minister George Papandreou publicly announced that the deficit would exceed 12% of GDP, far more than previously disclosed. Markets panicked. Greece's sovereign rating collapsed. In mere weeks, Greece went from being a healthy member of the euro to a systemic risk. The revelation exposed years of hidden debt, accounting manipulation, and political promises riding on borrowed money.